Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter, the night of the Passover. And the Lord Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So that very month that they were in, which the first Passover, you could say that they had, was the Lord said this would be counted to you as your first month. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. So each household would take a lamb, one lamb per household, according to the house of their fathers, on the 10th day, that is. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. So if there are too few people in the house for that lamb, then they would share with the neighbor, or keep it together with a neighbor, that where it made sense for the numbers to add up to where, let's say two small households would form, one regular sized household, and they would keep it together as one. Okay, so it makes sense. It says, every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. And in the NLT, it says, if a family is too small to eat a whole animal, let them share with another family in the neighborhood. Divide the animal according to the size of each family and how much they can eat. Your lamb shall be without blemish. So the lamb that you separate out on the 10th day has to be without blemish, meaning it can't have defects, it can't be maimed, it has to be a good, healthy lamb. A male of the first year. So it has to be a male lamb, and it has to be of the first year, 1 year old. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. So you could use a lamb or you could use a goat, or in this case, it would be I guess it would be considered a kid still. And ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. So on the 10th day, you would take the lamb, you separate it, and then you would keep it, obviously feed it, take care of it until the 14th day. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So now it wasn't one lamb for the whole assembly, but everybody would basically slay their lamb in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts. And what this looks like is, let me see, Exodus 12:7. Maybe we can get imagery here. All right, there we go. So when you have a door, right, you have the top, which is, the scriptures call it, right, the lintel, and then you have the side posts, which are here. Okay, and so that's what it means. You're going to take of the blood of that animal, the lamb or the goat, and you're going to strike it upon the two side posts. In this case, like, just put the blood there, right? Smear it, brush it, whatever, but put it on the two side posts and on the upper doorpost of the house wherein they shall eat it. So the house in which you're going to eat the Passover, this was how the Lord commanded it to be done. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. So that would be basically what they would eat that night, right? You would have the lamb, which was to be roasted, along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Eat of it raw. Whoa. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire. What that means is the lamb, the way it's supposed to be prepared, right? Number one, you're not supposed to eat it raw. You're not supposed to be eating any raw meat. But When it says not sodden at all with water, it doesn't mean that, water cannot touch it, right? Because how are you going to clean it and prepare it? What it means here is the actual method of cooking the lamb. You're not supposed to cook it. Okay, when it says sodden, it's like to boil. So that you're not making lamb stew, right? You're not supposed to cook the lamb, but you're supposed to roast it. His head with his legs and with the pertinence thereof. So that's basically the whole lamb, right? The legs, the insides, all of that. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. And I mention that because when you actually go into the word pertinence, it says, right, the inward part, the entrails, right, of sacrificed animals, and that entrails are their insides. So let's type that in here, entrails. A person or animal's intestines or internal organs, especially when removed or exposed. All right, continuing on. Verse 10, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. So basically, you gotta eat it. You gotta eat the lamb. But if any part remains, you're supposed to burn it. So this isn't like oh, let me just have like it tasted good, so I'm gonna save some for the next day. No, if you want to prepare lamb on your old time, you go ahead. But as part of the Passover ritual, you cannot, or ordinance, this is how it was supposed to be kept. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord Yahweh's Passover. So when eating it, it's not, let me just, take little bites to savor it. It's supposed to be eaten in haste. Haste is meaning, fast. Like if somebody's really, really, really hungry, and then you put food in front of them, and you just leave them by themselves, you see what it looks like to eat in haste. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt, i.e. their idols, I will execute judgment. I am the Lord Yahweh. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. So that blood would symbolize, okay, this household will not be touched. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial. So you're supposed to remember it. And ye shall keep it a feast unto the Lord Yahweh throughout your generations. Now, when it says a feast here, it doesn't mean that the Passover is like a party. It says a feast because it involves eating, right? You're basically eating a meal, right? Which is the Passover as part of this holy day. Okay, but it's still a solemn assembly. So it's a serious gathering. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So this is basically something to be remembered and kept as a law recurringly. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. So the the unleavened bread is, it doesn't have the agents in it that would make it leaven, right? And so, as it says, 7 days. So from the night of the Passover for the next, 7 days, you're supposed to eat unleavened bread. Even the first day. So the first day you would remove all leaven out of your houses so that you wouldn't end up eating any leaven. Definitely not to be tempted to eat it or by accident. Now, in the ancient world, the leaven was typically, you would have the leavening agent, right? Like yeast or whatever. And you would use that to bake your bread or make your cake or whatnot. Okay. And sometimes what they would do is they would take a piece of leavened dough and then mix it in with unleavened dough, and then it would leaven the whole lump. That's why the Lord said a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump, because if you leave it long enough, it would permeate throughout. It says, "For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel." So they will basically be ousted, cast out from the congregation. And in the first day, because sometimes, like the scriptures use cut, like the word cut off in a different sense, right? Sometimes it means like you got to put them to death, right? They'll actually be like cut off from the earth, meaning they'll be taken out of the earth. And sometimes it means like they will be casted out from the congregation. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be an holy convocation unto you. And a convocation here, I believe it goes into like a gathering or an assembling. Makorah, yep. Convocation, a sacred assembly, a calling together. So that's why it's not a party, okay? It's a serious assembly. That'll be on the first day, right, the Passover, and the seventh day, the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. No manner of work shall be done in them. So kind of like a Sabbath, right? You wouldn't do any manner of work except save that which every man must eat, in terms of the preparation of your food. That only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Obviously, because it was that same day that we were, as it says, delivered out of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever, which is why we keep the Passover even till today. At least now it's more to the best of our ability. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. Okay, and that's 7 days from the 14th day at even, which begins the 15th day. But from the 14th day at even to the 21st day at even, I believe that's 7 days. So 14th to 15th, that's 1, 15th to 16th, that's 2, and go on away until you get to that 20th to the 21st. So it says here, 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Now, when you go into the word stranger here, because dealing in this chapter, there are a couple of uses of the word stranger, and it's important to understand the context of it. So here the word is gar, right, which here it says a sojourner, a temporary inhabitant, a newcomer lacking inherited rights. This would be an Israelite. Okay, a heathen does not have inherited rights in the land, but an Israelite, even if they weren't born in the land, would still be a part of the commonwealth of Israel. It says a foreigners in Israel, right, though conceded rights. So when you go back to Exodus, and that's why it mentions these two here, because you only, like, Israel can keep the Passover, right? But the Lord makes a distinction because this isn't a ritual or a holy day for the nations. So it says here, whether he be a stranger, so whether this is an Israelite that is sojourning in the land but wasn't born in the land, or is an Israelite that was born in the land, regardless of of which one they fall under, this same rule or law would apply. Ye shall eat nothing leavened in all your habitations. Shall ye eat unleavened bread. So not only are you supposed to stay away from leaven for those 7 days, you are supposed to also eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. So he instructed them. They went and did as they were told, selected their lambs, and killed the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop. A bunch is like a bundle of hyssop, which is a plant, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin. So when you slay the lamb, the blood would be gathered into, as it says, a basin here. You would dip the hyssop in there, and then, as it says, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. So like I showed before, the top part of the door and then the right and left side of it, you would basically brush with the hyssop the blood on those sides. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. Because remember, the Passover started that night. And then you would we would keep it all throughout that night. You would have to stay in the house until the morning. Verse 23, for the Lord Yahweh will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, hence it's called a Passover, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in onto your houses to smite you. And the destroyer here is referring to Yahushai. How do we know that? Well, let's go to the book of Wisdom. Yahushai is the Messiah. But it's in Wisdom of Solomon. Let me see. Let's just look up Almighty Word. Yeah, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 18. And I'll start at verse 14. And this is dealing with Egypt. It says, for while all things were in quite quiet silence, and the night was in the midst of her swift course. So this was the night of the Passover. Thine almighty word, who is the word of the Lord, Yahushai. That tells you that even in John, I believe the first chapter. Thine almighty word leaped down from heaven out of thy royal throne as a fierce man of war into the midst of the land of destruction, which was Egypt, and brought thine unfeigned commandment as a sharp sword. So that commandment was for him to destroy all the firstborns. And standing up filled all things with death, and it touched the heaven, but it stood upon the earth. And what that means is that judgment was within that region or that area. It was filled with this death. All right, because this was that death angel, or the destroyer. And as you keep on reading, it'll go into the other things that happened to the Egyptians. And I think even maybe in the first, in the 17th chapter, in the first verse, it also gives you context. 17th chapter and the 18th chapter. So if you want more context, you can read those two chapters in the book of Wisdom of Solomon. Cool. So this is why the blood had to be put upon the doorposts. Verse 24, and ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. So the Passover, that is, would be something to be remembered and kept and honored for throughout our generations. And it shall come to pass when ye be come into the land which the Lord Yahweh will give you, which is as according as he hath promised, then ye shall keep this service. So it's called the promised land because it was the land that was promised to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, i.e. the land of Canaan. So Moses is saying here, when the Lord finally brings you into that land, you're supposed to continue to keep this service of the Passover. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? So when your descendants ask you, why do we do this, right? What's the significance behind this? Then ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord Yahweh's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshipped. So you basically tell them that we do this in honor of the sacrifice of the Lord, right? The Passover, where the Lord slew the firstborn of all the Egyptians, but spared Israel. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord Yahweh had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. So at this point, they were all, remember in Wisdom of Solomon, it mentioned, it says, well, and and that the night was in the midst, okay, of her swift course. And that's why I mentioned here that at midnight, the Lord smote their firstborns. This is from the humans, the cattle, even as it says, the captive that was in the dungeon, they all got cooked. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. So you can imagine the sound of that lamentation. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord Yahweh as ye have said. And take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. So get basically leave, get out of here, you know. But also leave a blessing for me, because clearly the God you serve is alive. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We be all dead men. Which is, if these people continue to dwell among us, we're done. You know, we can't survive. The land of Egypt can't survive with these people still here. Clearly, their God is angry that we're holding them hostage. We got to let them go. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs, and being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Now, it doesn't say at what time, because they were pretty much where it didn't waste any time in kicking them out. But chances are this might have been the next day, right, the next morning, because they were instructed not to leave the house until the morning. Now you might say, well, how come it says that Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron? I think it said that, right? By night. But this was after the death angel had already come and slain the firstborns, which is why he called them in the first place. So it says here, verse 36, and the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Now, favor as in like he made it so whatever it is that Israel asked, the Egyptians would give them. But it was more in the sense of what just take whatever you need and just go, right? It's kind of like when somebody comes to like rob a bank or a store, and they have a gun and they're threatening you or whatnot. You're just like, you know what, it's fine. Just whatever you need, just take it and leave, because if that's what it takes to get you out of here, then no problem, go ahead. But it's not like you're telling the robber like, oh, wow, I want you to take good care of yourself. In fact, here's another stack of cash. You can take this with you and make sure you buy some water on the way, right? You're not doing it because you like them. You're doing it because you want them out of there. So in a similar sense, Israel was able to spoil the Egyptians because they wanted them out of there. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men beside children. So not counting the children, you had about 600,000 men. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. So you had here a mixture, some Egyptians obviously likely in this mix that came up with the Israelites out of Egypt. Because remember that it was mentioned in the previous chapter how when the Lord brought the hail, it said those of Pharaoh's servants that believed, right, what was said and feared what the word of the Lord, they kept their servants and their cattle indoor. But those like Pharaoh who didn't regard it had their cattle and their servants and whatnot slain with the hail. So with all this going on and the fame of Moses sent all throughout the land, it makes sense why there were some additional that multitude that went up with them. And they might have even feared that shit. If we stay here, we don't know if some more misfortune is going to befall this place. So looking at how Israel was preserved throughout all these plagues, I think I might stick with them. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. See, so the process of leavening it, taking a piece, right, of leavened dough and then mixing it with the other, it takes time. And they didn't have time, right, to be able to do all of that. And the process of, having it be fully leavened. So their cake and whatnot had to be unleavened. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. That's how long they sojourned in Egypt. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all the hosts of the Lord Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. And that's referring to the Israelites. And here the Lord references them as armies. Verse 42, it is a night to be much observed unto the Lord Yahweh for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord Yahweh to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. So this is the instruction concerning the Passover and how it should be kept. There shall no stranger eat thereof. Now, when you go into this word stranger here, you'll notice this is a different word, right? In the Hebrew, this is nakar, which is dealing with a non-Israelite, okay, a foreigner, an alien, not one of an Israelite, okay, heathendom. So when it says here, there shall no stranger eat thereof, meaning, we're not going to keep the Passover with heathens, right? It's not for them. This is a right or an ordinance for Israel. Even in the history of it and what it signified, at least in the time of Exodus, you can see that was pertinent to Israel. However, it says, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. So say if you have a servant, because, you could have a servant that's not an Israelite. You could have a servant that is an Israelite, but they would be considered of your household, right? So if you had a servant that was in your household, similar to how the instructions of the Passover being that you would slay the lamb, right, or the goat, and have it in the eating be enough for in that house, they would consume that, right? So the servant wouldn't be looked at as, like, say, their own individual person, but rather that of another's household. So it says here, a foreigner and an hired servant shall not eat thereof. See, and this foreigner, let's go into this word here. Thawashab, a sojourner or foreigner. So one that is just temporarily, say, passing through the land, or an hired servant who is not of the household, right? He's just one that is, say, doing temporary work. They're not going to eat thereof, right? If they were a heathen, okay, because they're not considered as part of your household. They're just working for you, and it's temporary. In one house shall it be eaten. Thou shalt not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house. Neither shall ye break a bone thereof. So you weren't supposed to, I got a little over here. Let me take some over to Sally's house over there. No, that's why you sort that out before the Passover, right? Who's going to be with who? Is it enough for this house? Should this house join with this one and keep it together? And also, you weren't supposed to break the bones. And these all were, signifying Yahushai, right? As there's a lot of symbolism in the keeping of the Passover, and that lamb, that sacrificial lamb, and Yahushai, the Messiah, as his whole sacrifice was basically modeled after the Passover, being that he became that sacrificial lamb. And all the congregation of Israel shall keep it. When a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover. So see, now you say, well, just above the Lord said no stranger is going to eat thereof, but then he's saying here, but if a stranger is staying with you and they want to keep the Passover, then they can, but all the males got to be circumcised, right? And then let him come near and keep it. And this is why it's important to look into the meaning of the words, because here the word is gar, once again, which is dealing with an Israelite. Okay, an Israelite, more than likely not one that is foreign to the land, i.e. they weren't born in the land. Okay, but if they're dwelling in the land or dwelling with you and they're going to keep the Passover, so they're there at the time of the Passover and they have to keep it, they have to be circumcised, and then they can come near, as it says, and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. And that's why a couple verses above it mentioned basically how this rule would apply to both the stranger or the one that was born in the land. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep looking up for it there. Let's just keep on going. But we read it earlier. Verse 49, one law shall be to him that is homeborn, so an Israelite that is born in the land, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. So an Israelite that is not born in the land, that is a foreigner, that but comes into the land and is dwelling there with you, right? It would be one law, so they would keep the same Passover, right? They would follow the same instructions and everything. So that's the distinction between there, right? A stranger that shall not eat of it are the heathens, but a stranger that is or can eat of it once they are circumcised are the Israelites. Thus did all the children of Israel as the Lord Yahweh commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the self same day that the Lord Yahweh did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. Okay, which is once again how he likened the children of Israel onto armies, being that he is the Lord of hosts. And that brings us to the end of the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.